One. All right. So we're recording. I am so glad you guys are here. I'm Vicky Dill, and we're going to be talking about shut up, speak. No, show up, speak up, shut up. I'm looking at I'm looking at the gallery here. Um, it's safe to say we all have white faces, so we want to learn how to be good allies, um, and that's what we're here for. Now, is Zoom going to let me share my screen? Let's see if it'll let me let's see if it'll just let me share that.
Like it's working.
Okay. And I'm going to run in presenter mode because that way I'll be able to see you guys and the chat. I want to be able to keep my eye on the
There
chat.
we go.
So, as we heard in the beginning in the sort of the intro, we're using a hashtag if you care to do anything on social media. And right now, social media is a lot, right? We started off with just the basic Twitter and basic Facebook. Now it's like Instagram and TikTok. And STC is trying to get more people involved in Slack. I know Slack is really good for having conversations and capturing the thread. So, anyway, all of these things will take hashtags, and we're using a ton of hashtags, Conduit 21 being the important one. And then that the very last one, that A11Y, which kind of looks like ally, is a diversity hashtag, and it'll catch people that are looking uh, for uh, those people inside and outside communities that need more support. So, and takeaways. I wanted to come up with 3 different takeaways. Looking at all our faces, we all need to be able to understand our privilege, understand what our privileges looks like, and also what it's good for, because it is useful. And talk the easy question: who can be an ally? I think that'll be an easy question. I'll get the answer. And then, what does allyship look like? So, I wanted to introduce myself, and I feel like I have some skin in the game because I was the first woman engineer in 1978, the first woman engineer to be at this chemical plant. And I included this photo. I don't know if you can see this photo very well, but this is a beautiful blonde girl. And I say girl because she looks very young. You can tell she's probably naked underneath the crop in that picture. And this is a picture of a calendar that this company called Snap-on Tools would send everywhere. They would send basically to any one of their customers that use their tools. So every machine shop, every engineering lab had this calendar hanging on the wall of this naked woman. And I'm supposed to work inside that room, right? So that was if you have a time, read I've got a WordPress blog, but that's basically my story of being on the outside and feeling like I was the other and not one of the team. So, as I said, today we're going to talk about diversity, inclusion, equity. I'm going to talk about how we can be better allies. I think everybody's probably in some kind of group where they feel othered. So you can use those feelings and that experience to help you be a better ally to the groups in which you're on the inside and other people are on the outside. We're talking about models of diversity, and we're going to talk about understanding our privilege, who can be an ally, what does it look like, and then we'll talk about some resources. I hope we have some time for that, and then if we have more time, Q&A. I do want this to be a discussion. Everybody's got microphone rights, so feel free to just jump right in. The key word to get my attention is, hey, Vicky. So just say, hey, Vicky, and then you'll have my attention. I did include a couple of graphics. Diversity means that there's a lot of different types, right? But it doesn't mean we all work together as a team. And so that's why we want to make sure that in our discussion about diversity, we want to highlight inclusion, because it means that everyone has a part and they feel a part. And the other, in the DEI universe, we want to talk about equity, right? Equality is where everybody has the same advantage, and then equity is for the people who need advantage to get more advantage than those of us who are tall enough to see over the wall. So we're going to talk about models of diversity, and I want to talk about this the content of this presentation came from a presentation that I saw that was given by the University of Virginia. They've got a special study area where they are working on autism and people in the spectrum. And so a lot of this is written from the point of view of trying to be a good ally for people on the spectrum. But I thought that the principles really would apply to anybody. It would apply to small business owners, for an example, or women business owners, or people with different abilities, people of different backgrounds, people of different languages. We were talking in the break about now that we're working internationally, how does somebody in a different time zone perceive things versus the time zone that you're in? So I'm going to talk about a biological model, which in the example of autism, there is a lot of controversy within that community about trying to cure autism. People on the spectrum, and I was hoping my son would pop in, but he's my very favorite person on the spectrum. He doesn't really feel like he needs to be cured. And they feel like if you see the problem as you want something to be cured, then you're not really appreciating the things that they bring to the table. A different type of a thing is like if you have people that are English is not their second language, you might want them to sound more American rather than trying for us to understand how their accent helps. For men and women, a lot of time women are told to be less emotional, but I feel like being emotional is part of what we bring to the table. It's one of our superpowers. We don't want to cure us of our femininity. We want to have it, people make room for us. There's also, so that's the biological model. I'm in this body, I'm a woman. And then there's a social model, which I think is a better model than the biological model, because the biological model, you seek to cure. And in the social model, you seek to make society more inclusive, right? How is society exclusive? Find out about where that's happening and try to make more room and be more inclusive. How do we increase services and accommodations? Of course, that's easy to see with people with disabilities or people that have language issues, or but it's harder to see, how do we make room for people of different backgrounds, different economic resources, because we can actually make room for those kinds of things. And then how do we reduce our own oppression? By letting go of questionable norms. This is really easy to see in the autism community, because if we demand that people make eye contact with us, then we're putting people on the spectrum at a disadvantage. Because I know my son, if he's making eye contact with me, he's thinking, I'm making eye contact with her. I wonder what she's saying, because it's very hard for him to listen and make eye contact at the same time. So those are the two models, and I hope that we're going to adopt the social model and not the biological one. Like we want to make sure that we haven't reduced our welcoming of people on the spectrum to making them comply with our norms, and are our norms questionable. So we want to make sure that we are accepting differences, because differences make everybody better. And if we can make room for it, then society will benefit, because we'll be able to plug into everybody's superpowers. And this is definitely an easy thing to see in neurodiversity. But in other communities, I think we need an appreciation rather than a color blindness. We need to make room for single moms. We need to make room for small business owners. We need to make room for Black and brown people. And we just need to make more room so that we can have them comfortable enough to use their superpowers.
Hey, Vicky.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious about how to Councilwoman, please.
Councilwoman.
I either go for councilwoman or council member for the neutral. Anyway.
Got it.
I'm curious about how to be appreciative of differences in a sensitive way. a big question, and maybe you'll just see what you say about it.
Well,
Like, I see that you're Black. Isn't that cool? I mean, how to
right.
do that without being clumsy about it.
And that would be very awkward, right? That would be a very awkward conversation, and maybe a conversation that you'd want the person that's being othered to lead and guide. And we'll talk a little bit more about when do I speak up versus when do I listen. Because it's the elephant in the room that people are different, right? When I was the only woman engineer in the chemical plant in 1978, I didn't have to say, hey, I'm the only woman in this room. It was obvious, but I didn't necessarily get the empathy that I was looking for. And very few people wanted to have that dialogue with me. And I'm not sure that I would have been comfortable. What do you think, Laura?
I don't know. Well, I ran into the situation yesterday at a group meeting where there was a person who I perceived as gender non-binary.
Right.
And we got into a conversation where I was asking them, it turns out she, but I almost wanted to say, what are your pronouns? And what is a good way to invite that discussion?
And I'm told that that is a perfectly fine question to ask.
Okay.
Another way to start that conversation, you can see what I've done in Zoom. I have put my pronouns right on my profile.
Yeah, that's one thing they were saying. Like, everybody put their pronouns, so it becomes normalized if someone is a they or not what you would expect or whatever.
Right. Because for me, it is totally safe for me to say she, her, right? That is not going to upset my parents. That's not going to upset my church. But I have friends that as soon as they put their pronouns out, it's going to be scary for them because they'll be disclosing something. And so if the rest of us will help them out by just putting those of us who are perfectly safe and confident about it, we could go ahead and I see that you've added yours. That's really awesome. And in Zoom, there's a little blue box. If you click the blue box with the 3 dots, you can rename yourself. So I love that discussion. Thank you, Laura. So we want to make sure that we understand our own privilege. And that was another discussion we just had, is a discussion about our privilege, right? I am privileged to be able to say she, her. I want to use that power for good and not for evil, right? So because there are a lot of ways that our privilege can cause discrimination, can encourage a negative bias. We may be conscious of it, we may not be. Some discrimination is systemic and it's obvious to see, right? Differences in healthcare availability, differences in employment. There have been studies about submitting resumes and how the names sound. Certain names will get viewed by recruiters and certain names will not. And that is systemic. We need to make sure that we kind of guard against that. But some of it is very subtle. You can, and it's a person-to-person kind of a thing. You can show a lack of empathy. We can demand that people meet our norms, speak our language. In the case of disabled people, it has been pointed out that we erase their sexuality. We don't want to see them as fully human. We see them sort of as children, and that's not respectful of them as adults. And that's a person-to-person kind of thing. They also said that sometimes when you see someone as an inspiration, you have already labeled them as other. And so we want to watch for that, because we do want to be able to showcase the things that are going on with the people that are the other. But we don't want to make it such a thing like, oh, isn't that sweet? Say if it was a heavier person, a person with more body mass, you don't want to say, now they're making such great fashion in larger sizes, right? You want to make sure that how you praise them isn't something that's actually condescending in disguise. And self-awareness is really, really hard. So we're gonna open our eyes and we're gonna be more aware. And there we go. Now PowerPoint is cooperating with me. So who can be an ally? Everybody? Do you know the answer? You want to raise your hand and say me?
One would hope everybody.
Yes.
One would.
And
Yes.
can is a very strong word, but I believe any of us can be an ally. And any of us, we need to recognize our own privilege. And then we need to make a choice. And it will be personal. It will be active. I think we definitely, as allies, we need to take action. And I put in here, it's not performative, meaning we're not looking for an audience saying, oh, isn't Vicky nice because she's helping her company put on Black History Month. We want to make sure that my heart is really in it. So find something that you're passionate about and plug in there rather than trying to find something that you think is going to have a good audience. And then you need to be able to check in with yourself and with your group about your intent and the impact of your actions, which means we need to have diverse, if we're doing a planning of some kind, we need to have diverse voices in that planning so that we can be accountable to them and they can hold us. All right. So, and the big question then for us is, what does allyship look like, right? When we talked about how do we have those difficult conversations and what can we do to help? So we're going to talk about educating ourselves. And then we're going to talk about once we have educated ourselves, we're going to share what we know. And then we were going to take what we know and what we've shared and try to amplify the diverse voices. And we're going to support livelihood. Very important that this, show me the money. We really need to make sure that this is not just a touchy-feely, warmy-huggy, that this actually has economic impact and other kinds of impact. And then we're going to remember that a diverse person is an individual. And we're going to support diverse people financially, but emotionally in other kinds of ways. We're going to celebrate
Hey, Vicky.
accomplishments. Yes, Laura.
I'm just sort of jumping in here.
Go for it. I love
when you
it.
say livelihood, it's not just that, it's lives. We've
Yes.
run into that in the city, that the Black and brown people were especially, at first there was the thought that they were hesitant to get the vaccines, but then when we realized that's not the case, it's more a matter of access. We need to go to the communities and, purposefully be in their faces so that it's clear that we value these people so that they can get, this life-saving vaccination.
And that is a really good point, because some of this stuff is more than just, do you have a seat at the table? Is like, can you even, are you even alive to get to the table? Are you healthy enough to get to the table? But since we're talking about financial stuff, there's this little company that I love so much. I want time to show this to you. They make these bracelets. It's a company that's run by people on the spectrum. And they make, there we go, STEM toys for adults. So I saw these and I decided I had to have them. I had to buy one. And I'll show you the URL to their website when we go.
It looks like a slinky.
It is. It's very much like Slinky, and it can go arm to arm. Oh, but it's anyway, that keeps me happy. All right. So, educate yourself, and the key word here is yourself, right? It is not the job of my Black friends to educate me about racism. It is not their job to do my own intellectual and emotional work. Now, I can ask them for hints. Back in May and June, I guess, when we were Black Lives Matter was sort of making a real impact on society, there were a lot of my friends saying, watch this movie, read this book. And I watched that movie and I read that book. And that way they didn't have to explain to me, like that, what was the movie that I watched, 13, which was the history of the 13th Amendment and then its impact on culture later. That way they didn't have to explain that stuff to me. I already had watched the movie, and then I could have even a deeper discussion. And by discussion, we did a lot of listening, and that was the right thing to do. Oh, so here's this t-shirt here. I wanted to tell you a story. My church, uh, we have lots of women and we're very outspoken. And so we have this running joke that, that we are the uppity women of the exchange. And so we thought, well, we need to get t-shirts that say the uppity women of the exchange. And then we learned that apparently the word uppity is racist. And we do not need that word on a t-shirt. Um, and so I did a thesaurus slash dictionary. And so now they say rebelliously self-assertive. But we could have we could have all of a sudden, as a church, trying to do a really good thing and promote women in the church, we could have made a really bad decision and made a bunch of bad shirts. So anyway, don't let that happen to you. Make sure that when you're doing something that you think is a good thing, that you've also researched whether or not it could be a bad thing. And again, the slide just says, look for organizations that are already involved. If you can support the ACLU, if you can support the University of Virginia with their organization that helps people on the spectrum. And you want to make sure that you've done some research. Apparently, Autism Speaks is not well received by a lot of the autistic community, the community of autistic adults, because they're in the camp that wants to cure autism. So make sure that you do some research about the organizations that you feel are doing advocacy and that you support. So, all right, so we've educated ourselves, right? We've done our homework. Now we're going to share what we've learned with our family and friends. We're going to share it at work. We're going to share it in public venues, which I wanted to tell you another story about my church. My church has a really, really large percent of our population is LGBTQ. And as you can imagine, not a whole lot of churches are supportive of that. And we are Mennonites, and the district that we live in, my pastor can actually lose his license if he performs a same-sex marriage. And we're fighting that. We are making sure that we don't vote with our feet and go out. We want to have the conversations. We want to have the people who are on who disagree with us and our strong desire that we be able to perform same-sex marriages and have people in the LGBTQ community serve communion and do all of the things that the rest of us are allowed to do. And we want to make sure we have those conversations. We want to have people on the opposition is not a really great word, but people that we disagree with. We want to make sure that they meet our members, they hear from our members. And so when we go to the meetings where the whole district meets, we represent them, but then we want to make sure that we take that feedback home and let that community speak for itself. They don't need Viqui Dill talking for them. They need to speak for themselves. And we want to make sure that that happens. And of course, we have our social media where everyone learns how to change their mind, right? But we can actually use social media for good. So we're having conversations. Now, the most important part, we want to make sure that it's not us speaking all the time. We want to make sure that we can use, the slide says, look for opportunities where you can create a space for diverse people to directly express their thoughts. And thoughts is probably incomplete, but just their beliefs, their experience. I use my privilege to get the audience. Then once we've got an audience and the people that are being othered are speaking for themselves, we want to take a step back, because it's not about me speaking. It's about me advocating, but it's not about me being the speaker. And an example that I could give for that is I was really involved in 2020 at my company. We did a month-long Black History Month celebration, and I did really menial things just so that the people within the community could have time to do that. So I went to the dollar store and I bought tablecloths. I made a SharePoint site. I did as many supportive things as I possibly could, to make sure that the people who deserve to have the microphone had the microphone. I've already talked about the Virginia Mennonite Council and how we want to make sure that the community is speaking for themselves. And then in this presentation that University of Virginia did, they said we should really demand more representation from mainstream media. And we want to make sure that we give diverse people credit for their thoughts and compensate them, give them the credit, give them the financing, make sure that people within the community are the speakers and that they're compensated for that. So that's one thing we can do, is help to amplify. And then I showed you my Slinky bracelet. And we can definitely look for ways. And I love, Laura, what you said. It's not just their livelihood, but it's also their lives. We want to make sure that we hire diverse people, that we provide them with things they need, even something as life-saving as medical care. And we make sure that we get into the right neighborhoods. And we want to compensate people for their work, including their intellectual work. And this website, STEMtastic. That's where you can buy yourself one of those little fancy bracelets that is fun to wear. In Winchester, there's a coffee house that I like to visit there. That is a place for LGBTQ people to come and hang out and not feel afraid that they won't be welcomed. And right now with the Asian Pacific Islander, we need to make sure that we are intentional about supporting that community. And we look for ways, even in my little town of Winchester, that we can support them. So that's the money part of it. And we want to make sure that we see people on the outside as human beings and not as some kind of cause, not as some kind of inspiration because, oh boy, you know, don't you look great in those larger size dresses or whatever. When a person that's on the spectrum discloses to you as a friend, or more importantly, discloses at work that they are on the spectrum, there's a lot of vulnerability in that. That is a really scary disclosure. That I think that is as scary as coming out of the closet is for people in the gender identity community. And so we want to make sure that we respect that takes a lot of bravery. That takes a lot of courage. We want to make sure that that experience is good. We want to remember that all individuals are different. People are going to be needing and self-advocating at different rates. And Laura, this is what we were talking about before. We let them tell us what they need. We want to make sure we ask the right question. You know, my pronouns are she, her, what are yours? Or how can I increase your comfort? And that's kind of a hard conversation to have, but I think we really need to be having those. So we're going to support the diverse people that we know. Again, we talked about when people are listening, pass the mic, get out of the way, do the SharePoint site, do the menial shopping, do anything that you can so that the voices are heard. And we talked about adding pronouns to our profile. I'm not brave enough to do it at work yet. Is anybody that's listening brave enough to do it at work yet?
I'm almost there.
Are you?
It's Lyra. This is Lyra. I'm almost there. I've got a couple of my colleagues that have done it. A lot of people haven't. My manager hasn't. And I'm just feeling like I believe in it. I care about it. So Lyra, why haven't you done, you know, just damn do it. And I need to do it in LinkedIn too.
Yeah, I think I need to have a good conversation with my coworkers.
It's just the easiest. It's just the easiest, simple of thing. And the potential for what it might cost you, it's just so small relative to the people that do it because they have to, because they need to, you know what I mean? Just, you know, just show some solidarity.
Right, to make it a normal
work
thing.
story for that.
Yeah.
I had the admin on our floor I had become friendly with, and she's a woman of color, and she knew I was a tech writer, and she reached out to me because her daughter was going to be graduating with a tech writing degree. So I ended up being her mentor for a little while, and it was, it was really great. I actually just asked if she was looking because we have a role to fill, but it's in Salt Lake City, and she turns out her husband just became a New York City firefighter, so they're not going anywhere. But it was just so nice how, just that conversation and knowing the person for a while and talking to them and getting to know them. And it just, it led to, me helping out her daughter, which, felt pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't done it, but I wanted to thank you guys for this discussion because honest to God, I've tried to look into it, but I didn't understand why. I didn't understand how it was helping. Like I got it. I just got it. And I wanted to say how much I appreciated that it just normalizes it for people who, yeah, I don't know that I never made that connection. And so I just wanted to thank you for
Because
putting
it's
that together. That was
right.
just
It's exactly what Jessica said, because I never would have thought to do it. I mean, I just, well, they're doing that, but it's them and I don't care. But
yeah, and I didn't understand the value of it. I was like, this seems like a weird thing now, or and it just that I didn't know why, like or what the value I was bringing in. So thanks. So I'll be quiet.
I agree. I haven't thought to do it, and I haven't seen many people at work do it, but it's something I'll consider. I might.
It's a small thing, and we can all do it. So, yay!
Yeah. Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you, guys. All right. So
well, it's also the value. Oh, I just wanted to say something.
Yeah,
I was trying to figure out what I was trying to say. It's also the value of this kind of communication, because I think I was at something, the Tech Hub South Florida, and they were talking about it, but they were talking about a way that said, well, that's just, it sounded like a young people trend. Like it was just like a trendy thing to do. This is just something we do for, and I was like, okay, maybe that's like TikTok. I don't do that either, But it wasn't very meaningful, and I didn't get it. So it's the value of deeper communication by somebody who's very sensitive to it. So I appreciate you for that.
Right. Because we can use our privilege for good. We don't have to use it for evil. Yeah.
Vicky, it's Lyra again. I want to add one really quick thing because I think the notion of allyship, the way you describe it, is so important. I am African American. Some of us are allies and beneficiaries, or whatever the neutral word is for someone, benefiting from the effort of an ally. And sometimes walking that tightrope is a little tricky. So my privilege comes from my relative financial security, educational background, family connections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm having to, pay it back, pay it forward, recognize when I need to be an ally, and then recognize when I need to let an ally help me out. So it is an interesting thing, but I appreciate your framing of what allies are. Thanks.
And when we're talking about, just asking for help is really hard. And that takes a lot of courage. And we want to make sure that when people do ask for help, that they have a good experience with it and they're not told, go away, you bother me. The way that I was told when I was the first woman engineer at the chemical company, I asked to not be called girl. And I asked for people not to refer to the other women in the office as girl in my presence. And boy, did they have a whole bunch of things to say to me about why calling a woman a girl was a real good compliment. And it was not. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that conversation. Yeah.
When people tell you you should feel complimented.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, pat me on the head and anyway. So that's what allyship should look like. And I think what we've learned today is if we can make one little step and when we know better, we do better, right? And we're going to continually be making those steps. We're going to learn more. We're going to listen more. And we're going to do better. And STC is going to benefit because of it. Oh, 5 more minutes. Okay. And I'm going to post my slides so you don't have to take down any of these websites, but I did actually have some references. So just want to make sure I share them with you. We do have, SDC does have a diversity, equity, and inclusion advisory panel, and I am on that. We're going to be presenting, I think, at Leadership Day, and there's lots of resources for SDC communities. Just want to make sure. And we're trying to get a lively discussion in Slack. There is a Slack channel for DEI. So find Slack. Slack's hard to find. Find Slack at the STC website and then start the conversation. And I love this video. Inclusion starts with I. So I want to recommend that.
One thing that we as writers can do, and I just realized this was something I was doing. I actually brought over my style guide from my old role to my new role, and we revised it. But I started adding inclusive language and diversity content into our style guide to make sure and get some resources and stuff like that. So that's a simple thing that we could do, you know, is language choices and making sure that we have some kind of diversity, language about our diversity in our style guide.
And actually there was some chatter on Slack about that yesterday and this morning. There are a couple of resources that'll help you do that. So yay, Ed, you go. So we understand our privilege. We know who can be an ally, and everybody say me. And we know a little bit better what it looks like. This is me at Black History Month. I just thought we had a choir come, and I wanted to have a selfie made of myself with all the kids. The local high school choir came for our Black History Month celebration. I think we've answered questions. We have 3 minutes left for questions. Do we have more questions, or does anybody want to share a story?
Vicky, did you say where are these slides? Because I did try to get some of the links that you had in your slides in my notes, but I think I missed a few. So where are the slides going to be available?
So I just posted them on SlideShare, and I'll make sure that the Conduit organization gets them out. Yeah.
Thanks.
I hate taking notes. Nobody should have to take notes. Hey, Jim, you want to say hi?
I'm not a big note taker either, but every once in a while I'd see when I go type it up.
Are you guys talking about me?
Yes, we're talking about you. You want to put your face on camera?
No.
Okay. So that's my son, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
It's embarrassing to have parents.
Vicky, I'd just like to run something by you because we're in this forum. Because as someone who struggled with her weight, one of the things that I've always learned is one of the best things to do is to find anything to compliment someone on that has nothing to do with the way they look or the way they present themselves. Because, you know, years of being someone who's like, oh, you lost weight. There's so many things you can say.
The worst.
You know, you could just say, I love your outfit. God, your earrings are great. Like, I just learned to do that, especially with women. This is harder with women because everybody thinks it's an automatic compliment when sometimes it just puts you on the spot and it makes you an other and you feel all weird, which is how I'm relating to this. So I'm just imagining that one of the best ways to be an ally is just to, it's not that you don't want to bring it up because you're avoiding it, but you can be nice to people without ever mentioning, like, hey, you're black, like, you know, like you were saying. Or somebody here said it made me laugh really hard.
Yeah. So I am a former 300-pound woman. I did have the surgery, the bypass surgery. And the sad part of that is that people now treat me a whole lot nicer, which is really sad. I did it because my joints.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
My knees were getting ready.
Yeah, no, but I was thinking how that probably applies. Like to anyone, you know, someone who is trans or you're not sure, you could just make a nice comment about their outfit. You know, I mean, it doesn't need to be, you know, I like your shirt. You know, if you want to compliment someone, I've always wondered if that was
very
transferable.
Happy. You know, you look very happy.
Yes, exactly.
Well, tell me what's going on in your life rather than, you know, whatever.
Or I like what you said in that meeting, make it about the professional situation.
Sorry. I'm thinking of social interactions. I'm sorry.
Oh, true, right.
You know, when you're with women and you can always say, I like your earrings, you know, or well, I just did it again. Maybe you're not with all women, you know, you don't know, but you can always just find a way to compliment someone on their accomplishments or a joke or something. I don't know, that's just something I learned.
That's a really good
So
point.
funny,
Thanks for
Bob.
bringing that up. Any more stories in the 15 seconds we've got? I love this conversation. I wish we could talk for hours.
Yeah,
You guys
thanks.
are great.
Thank you very much, Vicky.
Yeah,
This
thank
was
you.
really, this was really special.
Thanks, Vicky.